Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lessons My Son Taught Me. We have a lot to discuss
Yeah,
today,
yeah,
on today. So, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Let's get started.
yeah.
So, before we begin, um, let me announce this is our third episode,
Of course, for season.
and we have titled it How to Acknowledge My Mother Wound. So, this is a lesson that my son taught me, having him ultimately taught me.
Mm.
Before we get into that, I do want to give the proper trigger warning as we will be speaking on certain themes of childhood trauma, domestic violence, and physical abuse. So we just want our listeners and viewers to be mindful so that they can prepare themselves emotionally
Mm-hmm.
as well as not physically. Well, actually, trauma does sometimes invoke physical responses. So emotionally, physically, and mentally, um, before we speak on any of those things. All right. So this is a topic that, I've really gone back and forth with
Mm-hmm.
because it's heavily centered around your grandmother,
Yeah.
my mom, the lovely Miss Ann, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she had me when she was about, I want to say 30. So, whereas I had Quincy when I was 20, she had me when she was older. And um, at the time, she was unmarried to my father, but my father has fortunately always been present in my life. This episode is not about him. This episode is essentially about kind of, and I'm trying to take my time with this. I've got a box of tissues in case, in case good sis, she, me,
Yeah.
her gets emotional. But this episode is about me identifying points in my rearing with her specifically
Mm.
and how that shaped me as a mother when it came to you, but also just within like the past year or two made me more mindful of the fact that I have a mother wound. You know how like people say, "Oh, she's got daddy issues." Like I got mommy issues, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that since I'm now mindful of and I can acknowledge it, I can move forward in working on it, not just by myself, but having the conversations with your grandmother that may be difficult. And I'm a little nervous about that.
Mm.
So my goal is to perhaps have a conversation with her before this episode airs because I don't know quite all what I'm going to share. I've written some things down because I did want to make certain points, but of course, this is never scripted.
Yeah.
And, I'm nervous.
Just let it roll.
Yeah, I'm going to let it roll. But basically, growing up with my mother, I was the oldest of three children.
Mm.
And I have a sister who's 4 years younger and a brother who's 6 years younger. And what often happens in that situation is the oldest becomes parentified,
Yes.
which you can certainly relate to,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But there have been times that I realized, thinking back, like in my relationship with my mother, where it it confused me, it hurt me, it traumatized me,
Mm.
and of course, angered me. And what happened in the past is essentially why you see the relationship she and I have to this day.
Yeah.
So, without being too harsh, like, what is it that you see when it comes to the relationship between she and I?
Okay. Without being too
Yeah,
harsh,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah. Work
try.
on it.
Let's see. There's just like it's like she's of course your mother. She had you, but it's not really much of a It's just like a see you then and there type relationship almost. And in like a sense of like a hierarchy.
A hierarchy.
Yeah,
Explain that.
in a hierarchy, like there's the parent and then there's the child. There's kind of no hierarchy in that sense.
So almost kind of like we're equals.
Yeah, basically.
Ooh.
Basically.
Yeah.
Um,
But okay, to that point, what you already know what I'm gonna say. To that point, don't you think I'm probably a little bit higher up on that hierarchy than
yeah,
she
I
is?
wasn't gonna say like
Respectfully,
respectfully. Yeah,
respectfully.
respectfully, I don't think there's a lot of respect. Just to be blunt.
Yeah,
Just
you're
to be blunt.
right. I acknowledge that, and I try to be. So here's the thing, right? Like, so what you're mentioning is you notice the lack of respect I give my mother. And I hate that you see that because clearly you don't treat me with that same lack of respect. But I've set like different expectations when it comes to you. I try to maintain respect for my mom, and I love my mom. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, I realize that there are certain things she will say or do that instantly trigger me. And because, of my lack of patience or being able to regulate some of my emotions, I can be very sarcastic. I can be very hurtful and mean in my comments. And the way that I feel like I can protect her, in the past, it's been blocking her, right? And now it's usually just kind of like dealing with her from a distance, right?
Yeah.
Because my nerves are so short and I hate that. So I hate that you see that lack of respect because it's not what I ever wanted to portray.
Yeah.
Because of course it's not something that I want you to in turn give me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's interesting is growing up, I had a healthy fear of my mom. If you would believe that today, would you believe that?
Honestly, no. She's like very docile.
I had a healthy fear because she married my stepfather, my ex stepfather, who was absolutely horrid. Okay, horrid. So think about Cinderella and her stepmother. That's how I felt coming up because he was very strict. He was in the military. He influenced her and my relationship with her to where uh, before she met him, she never gave me whoopings or spankings. Granted, I was probably a little flippant and sarcastic at 3, and he taught her essentially how to discipline me, and he also disciplined me physically, right, with whoopings and making me right. Like, if I was talking in class, if I got in trouble at school for talking a lot, I would have to write like 100 times. I remember one time I had to write 500 times. And I don't know if this is me being like having shut out the trauma or what have you. I feel like at one point I had to write 1,000 times. So that was the beginning of it, right? I grew very resentful towards her because of how she treated me due to my ex stepfather's influence.
Mm.
Okay. And that physical abuse was the catalyst, you know. So, yes, she said things that a lot of Black parents would say to their children in the middle of whoopings. And mind you, I can't cite everything I got in trouble for in
Mm-hmm.
school. I don't think I was the worst kid, but I don't think it really required corporal punishment. So the whole this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you,
Yeah.
going into the bathroom, turning on the water, like running the water to make it seem like you're going to run bath water before getting a spanking or whooping. Let's call it a whooping because that's what we call it in the Black community,
Mm.
so that the neighbors don't hear. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And remembering the welts and remembering how much I felt like I hated her for doing what he taught her to do to me.
Mm.
And baby, I think I probably only shared with Papa, my father, a couple of years ago or when I was an adult, that my stepfather used to, um, you know, administer physical discipline. Because if he
Mm.
knew, you think he would have put up with that?
No.
And that's what sucked because they didn't have a conversation, right? My father was present. My
Mm.
father was up the street around the corner. He was always there. So he he would not have appreciated knowing that at the time it was going on. Um, but what are your thoughts in in that?
I mean, yeah, that definitely sucks, and that definitely honestly leaves a scar. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, honestly, I don't know. I would have liked, had I been alive, I would have liked to see Papa come up there. But no, I do get it. Like, especially the type of person that Grandma Ann is. Now I
Mm-hmm.
can imagine like back then she's very, motherly, and she's like on you all the time. But at the same time, I feel like she's easily influenced, which is
Mm-hmm.
why, she allowed her ex-husband, your stepfather,
Mm-hmm.
ex-stepfather, to do that, and which is why, she's so submissive now when it comes to
Mm.
terms with you.
You said it. You said it. Like
So,
submissive. Like
hmm,
complete 180.
yeah.
Q. Complete 180. The woman that you see today is nowhere near the same woman I grew up with,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So it's very interesting that the way that that dynamic has shifted. But continue.
Yeah, but it's definitely a theme, especially with being the older child
Mm-hmm.
and having a new parent come into your life. You could
Mm.
either have one side, the parent is very strict and they start to encourage, the
Mm-hmm.
biological parent to enforce
Yes,
whoopings or spankings or discipline. But
that's
on the
true.
other hand, they could come in and be like, "Let up,"
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
has
You're
happened
right.
in
Do you
many.
think that was the case in?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I used to get spankings
Mm-hmm.
as discipline, but
From
then
whom? Just
my father.
right.
I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Let's
Yeah.
let's
So,
let's keep Alicia's name free and
hmm,
clear.
yeah,
Okay.
I used to get whippings from my father, but then my stepmom came into the picture, and
Mm-hmm.
she kind of, my father was very hardened, but she kind of came into the life,
And
and
soften
yeah,
him.
she
I
softened
really
him for sure.
appreciate that
Yeah.
because you weren't like that. Like nothing you did from my perspective warranted that,
Mm.
but from your father's perspective, he thought, well, look at how I grew up.
Yeah.
I didn't get any whoopings, and that's why I was so bad.
Mm.
Mm, mm, mind you, he was adopted by this lovely, extremely affectionate white family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he saw the discipline. How am
That
I
you
going to
never
say
got.
this? that he never got from his friends, because your father is black, but he's also sometimes black adjacent or rose gold. That's what you said, not me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said, Jim, right? That's his father.
Yeah,
and so I think he saw the discipline just by being black adjacent and was like, oh, that's something that I should be doing because that's a part of my culture, that's a part of my heritage. And that's something that growing up in the household I was in, I didn't experience. And that's why, and I mean, it could be, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that's why he ended up in the situations he ended up with. It could have been as simple as with me setting very clear, explicit boundaries. And, you know, I say what I mean and I mean what I say.
Yeah. I do have a question though. So, like, in my case, you know, when Alicia came, she was very soft, and she eased my father's mind, which ended up, you know, stopping the whoopings, but also ended up stopping the whoopings for the younger siblings as well. So I want to know, like, how do you think it went? You know, when your stepfather came, was he, you know, the same with you as he was with, you know, Aunt Candace and Uncle Marcus, or do you think?
Actually,
Because he was their children.
He was their father,
He was
right?
their father.
Yeah, no. So that's a really good question because sometimes you see that the step parent comes in and treats the biological child differently from, you know, the stepchild from their biological children. And to be fair, if I think about it, they got reprimanded, but perhaps no. If I really think about it, no. And let me go even as far to say when my stepfather and mother separated after 10 years when I was 13, my mother was still in the mindset of physically disciplining her kids. My sister probably got a lot of that. And our brother did not. So then when you look at my sister, her relationship is so much more fractured with our mom than mine ever could have been. And, you know, I was determined to not be like her at all in that sense with corporal punishment. And I can say that I've really held true to that. I don't know if I've already mentioned it on the show where, like, the one time I had to backhand you real quick was like I fell asleep. You were on the floor coloring. And I fell asleep for just a little duck nap. I don't take cat naps. I fell asleep. Don't worry, my sorors know. I fell asleep to take a duck nap. And when I woke up, somehow you had managed to literally with crayon color into the floor, into the carpet. And I said, Quincy. And so I'm like frustrated, right? Like, how the heck did this even happen? And so, you being a very astute child, see my demeanor, my behavior, I'm going to get stuff to clean it up. And I'm like, cleaning it up. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Out of your little mouth at 2 or 3 years old, 2 or 3, like, seriously, you go, I don't like you, mama. I want to go to dada's. Pop! I don't know what you thought you was about to say, but I was like, your name is not Timmy, little Timmy, Timmy or Tommy. And you're not going to speak to me like that. And you shut up. You didn't cry or nothing. You didn't cry or nothing, Jesus. Okay? And that was like the end of that interaction. And that was just a, you know what I'm saying, right in your mouth. You know, I was a little ping pong champ back in the day. So that flick of the wrist, I had that flick of the wrist. Good. But what was so cute was on our way to a program later that night, you were in the back seat, and I wanted to address that because I was like, oh my gosh, I hit my child. I don't believe in hitting my child. And I said, Quincy, mama is so sorry for hitting you, for, coloring in her floor, but it was my fault. I fell asleep. I should have been watching you. So even then, I was accepting accountability. Like, come on now, Tosh. You fell asleep with a 2-year-old coloring on the floor. Worse things could have happened.
Yeah.
For real, for real. And you, my dear loving son, was like, I'm sorry for coloring your floor, mama. No, in fact, I think you started with that. I didn't even broach the subject. I think we were in the car and it was silent, and you were in the back seat in your car seat, and you were the one that spoke up. I'm sorry for coloring your floor, mama.
That's funny.
I know. I was like, no, Quincy, it's mama's fault. I shouldn't. And that's when I went into my apology. But yeah, I've been had a good son. So all that to say, you should have never been whooped the way that your father was whooping you. He felt like he had his reasons, but gratefully, Alicia came in and she mitigated that. Um, Back to my mother, having grown up and losing that trust for her and respect for her because of how she was raising me,
yeah,
based on what her husband was telling her to do. I became very like independent at a young age. And uh, I know when I went off to college, I was young. I was the youngest graduate at 17 of my friends. And I, I didn't like bust loose, for lack of a better word, but I felt like I was grown and I wasn't coming back home. Baby, like when I got dropped off at college, it was like a flip. It was like I never have to go back home. I never have to deal with that woman. And there were times when I would be on the phone with her, like cussing. But not for nothing. It wasn't because of me and her. It was because now that I was out of the home and I was the parent, she was not tending to my brother and sister's needs. They called me my first year in college crying because they said, mom's not going to have a Christmas tree up. She said she's not buying any Christmas presents. Can you talk to her? And I was like, wait, what? How does this stop now that I'm in college? Like, I don't know what her situation or her reason was at the time, but I felt really bad for my siblings. So I ended up, I think it was after Christmas, I gathered up all of my Christmas money and bought things for them. And I made 2 big care packages to send back home for Marcus and Candace. But I didn't go home. I went up to New Jersey with my roommate. So you have my college classmates seeing me with this very tense relationship with my mother, cursing her like for real, like she a woman on the street. Because why you not taking care of your kids? I'm not their mother. Why do I have to tell you how to, what I'm saying? Like, because it didn't make sense to me. And like I said, like, I don't understand or know what was going on at the time. But I just know I was hurt for my siblings. So fast forward a little bit to when I became pregnant with you.
Yeah.
I became pregnant with you and I hid that entire pregnancy. I hid that entire pregnancy from not only my dad's side of the family, but from her. Because, she had always emphasized an education, and I was planning to continue my education. I was never once considering dropping out, but I didn't need the stress. I didn't need the judgment. I didn't need her trying to convince me not to have a child.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was grown enough to make this decision, which led me to getting pregnant. And I'm grown enough to take accountability and handle my responsibility. And your father, of course, was very ecstatic and he shared it with his friends. We shared it with his family first. We ended up sharing it with Granny first
Mm.
and Grandpa and Gran. And I, my relationship in the way that I grew up in my household with Grandma Ann, it, it lacked a lot of emotional security, right?
Mm.
So, whereas how I am with you, like, I love you, Quincy, and I speak life into you and I'll hug you. We didn't have that growing up, you know.
Mm.
I hugged Uncle Marcus maybe like a couple months ago. Do you know he broke down crying?
Mm-mm.
And he was like, "You've never hugged me." And I felt awful in that moment because I was thinking in my head, yeah, no, I haven't.
Mm.
I haven't hugged my brother since he was a baby, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, but like, we grew up to model like how we were raised, point blank, period.
Yeah.
So, how you think I got so close to the Martins family? How I got so close to Zara's family? How I ended up going home uh, my freshman year in college, or for Thanksgiving, I think it was, I went to um, New Jersey. I was always seeking the emotional stability that I seemed to witness in my
Other people say.
friends,
Yeah.
my friends' household.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because think about how they consider me. Mama Ola considers me like her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
been I've been rocking with Timmy and Zara since I was like 13. Her parents considered me their daughter. I was always at their house. I was always spending the night there. I was almost kind of like, how like you see those TV families
Mm-hmm.
and you wish like your family was more like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was like I ended up finding that with my with my friends
Mm.
and their families.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like clear. I've noticed it for a long time, especially in the way that Mama Ola, Grandma Ola, and Timmy, they treat you like
Mm-hmm.
like I really, for the longest time, I thought she was related to them.
I am related. You can't tell me that I'm not Natasha. Oh, okay. Shit, a la fiani.
But yeah, no, and you wouldn't expect that it be from you know where it's come from, but over the time, over the years, you definitely see that, especially with like how you are with Grandma Ann now.
Mm-hmm.
The role switch has been like night and day.
Mm-hmm.
With you being with her when you were a child, and her being your overseer, but not really
Not
caring.
overseer.
She was
Yeah.
she was not really emotionally, intelligent with you.
Mm.
You said that she was your parent. You talk to me all the time, but you said she was your parent, but she never really helped you with things that you needed help with.
Yeah.
As a young woman, and it's very like clear that you would seek out these other families not only for love and support, but just to feel stable.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, very much so. And like, this episode is not meant to, crap on my mom,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. And, you know, what I have come to realize, especially as I'm older now, of course, that I'm a mother. Once everybody becomes a mother, or at least once they become older, they recognize perhaps the reasons why
Mm.
they're their parents did the things that they did,
Yeah.
first of all, we have to acknowledge she only did what she knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And having learned more about my mother and her upbringing as an adult, her household was chaotic.
Mm.
So you don't remember your great grandfather, but like he was a veteran of the Vietnam War. He had a drinking problem,
Mm.
and he used to beat on my grandmother just because it was Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? And my mom was the oldest of five. She witnessed those things.
Mm.
She wanted so badly to save her mother and become very successful and buy her a house, a big house that she and her siblings could live in so they wouldn't have to deal with her father. And she manifested it for herself, right? So, the one thing that I really, one of the qualities that I love, about my mother is the fact that she has such a strong work ethic, right?
Mm.
She is very consistent with how she works, and she's worked very hard for a long time. So I would love to, of course, better our relationship as well as. Okay. Whew, child, get it together. Okay. As well as, kind of take care of and support her, just like in the way that she expected to do for her own mother. So, yeah, I feel like really, she essentially instilled that strong work ethic in me,
Yeah.
and she did instill education in me, even though she never pursued a higher education.
Mm.
But because she's so well read, she's so very articulate, and she instilled a love of reading in me. Hello, like that is probably one of my core qualities.
Mm.
The fact that I can bring out these absolutely obnoxious vocabulary words because of my reading. And she taught me to read when I was really young. And I remember it wasn't all bad. Don't get me wrong, it was never all bad, ever. Okay, because I remember her always reading to me at night, her always buying me like books because I loved books. She was always reading, I was always reading. We would be in her bed reading our books together. And we had a very close relationship when I was younger. And I feel like my stepfather came and somehow like fractured that. But even when he was, ooh, like I can't leave this out. My stepfather was abusive to my mother,
Mm-hmm.
verbally and physically. I witnessed just once him physically, like with his hands around her throat. I give her the credit. She left after that incident.
Mm.
She left after that. Other times he was very verbally abusive to her. And with three kids, she ended up moving, to the suburbs and had us in private schools, was working a part-time job. Like she did her big one when
Yeah.
it came to raising her three kids and providing for them and making sure that they didn't have the same environment as her.
Yeah.
Where there was a man physically abusing the the mother in the household. And I will always give her credit for that because a lot of women don't leave.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you knew that.
I mean, yeah, I did know that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really, but in her actions, especially now, I can say back then, I can definitely see it. She's very supportive.
She's so
She's very
supportive.
supportive now.
She's so supportive, child. Like, if she could go to somebody
Hmm.
and give them my entire collection of songs and be like, okay, I want you to play this on the radio, like, she would do that.
Yeah.
And just even speaking about her now, like, I realize how much love I have for my mother and how much respect I do have for her. It's just been a little bit hard because we're all trauma babies. B Hall said that. But we're all trauma babies and we have to really, um, you know, heal that inner child, that young Tosh, in order to be more open and receptive to the healing and the mending of relationships that we have to do now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like having you has been, of course, and made me so much more mindful of how I want to parent opposite of how my mother did.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I feel like I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious to know um, if at all there may be if you feel like there may be a subtle, without being too harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind that I'm an artist and I'm
Yeah.
sensitive about my ish. But if you feel like I may have put upon you a subtle mother wound of sorts or transferred,
Another one.
if you could think of it.
Yeah. Um.
Just something that maybe you're hyper aware of or hyper mindful of when it
mm,
comes to interacting with me.
yeah. Definitely time. Time is a big one.
What
I'd
do you
say.
mean by that?
Just ever since I was young. When it comes to time, you are a very urgent person. You like to get things done
Oh,
and be on
yeah,
time.
that is
So
true.
it would be when we were at the church, and I remember because it was such a big word. I think it was one of the first large words that I remember. But it used to be like um, expeditiously.
Expeditiously.
Yeah, expeditiously.
See, I've been saying that before Ti.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I would, feel rushed to get something done, or
Mhm.
and it just like became like this, like like a dog,
So
like
it probably gives you like Pavlov's
kind
dog.
of
It
like
gives you a little bit
like
of anxiety.
yeah, like like when dad, like when he used to whistle and call me, which I still respond to, by the
I
way.
don't
It
like that,
sucks. It's like
Jim. I don't like that.
it's inside my brain. I can't.
We raised a child, not a dog.
But anyway, yeah, like it would be that or exactamundo.
First of all, exactamundo isn't even a real word.
No.
Okay. Me and my line sister Deja came up with that. And so that's that on that.
But it would really be that. But then, that it got fine, and I got used to it. But
Mhm.
really, it became more so me taking those habits. Like I'm a very patient person, but my friends have noticed that I am a little bit more like, come on, we got to go. We got to be on time. 10 minutes before, no less. And we can't be late.
Oh yeah, because what I say, being on time, being early is
Yeah.
on time is late,
Late.
and being late is unacceptable.
Yeah. So I can seem kind of like a control freak in that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So honestly, I don't know. I would say that's probably my mother would. I don't know. Yeah.
I can respect that, but at least that's why
I know it's good, and it comes with its good and bad
exactly.
sides.
I hear you on that, but I'm just so grateful that at least you and I are able to have these conversations that I wasn't able to with my mother,
Yeah.
and I definitely just look forward to strengthening our relationship more with them.
Yeah. Oh, for
So
sure.
I love you so much, Quincy.
I love you too, Mama.